Hi there. After a long pause, we are back. It's myself, it's Melissa McDonald. We have lots of celebrity divorce related topics to talk about, but there's two. There's two glaring ones that have been circulating in the past couple of months, and we are going to start with the debacle that has been Kanye West and Kim Kardashian over the past couple of months. I say that, and maybe I should say it a little bit lightly, because obviously Kanye West is going through what looks to be like a mental health crisis. But there are family law issues that have been in play. There's a big child support award out there that I know Melissa wants to talk about. There's probably plenty of other issues. So Melissa, it's great to see you. It's great to be back and doing this again. And where are we? What's going on?
It's great to see you, and it's been far too long, so we'll have to not let it go so long. I know we've both had a lot sort of going on professionally, personally, you especially personally. We've had a lot going on. So yeah, so Kim and Kanye, even setting aside sort of Kanye having gone full Nazi, which you never want to go full Nazi. It's not, whatever. It's sort of like publicly imploding himself. The thing that I was that sort of has caught my attention is that, they're trying to work out their divorce settlements, and they have joint custody, and Kanye was, I think, agreed. I don't know if the order was agreed to pay. My life just got weird. Child support in the amount of $200,000 a month, which is a large amount of money, sure, but they're both very, wealthy people. Now, the online I have a lot of opinions about child support, and the discourse about child support, like, I find very vexing. So a lot of the online discourse about the child support amount has been sort of centered around, well, Kim doesn't deserve that money, or, well, Kim has a lot of money, so she doesn't need child support, which I find it very much vexes me, because I feel like, and obviously I'm not a divorce attorney, so you'll have the like better perspective on this, but I feel like child support, first of all, child support is not for Kim. Child support's for the children. Child support isn't for mom. Money is fungible. Like, there's no like, mom's taking the child support and using it to go to the spa. Like, money is fungible. Like, that's not a thing. So there's that. And also, like, in a situation where maybe you don't have joint custody and you have your kids like every other weekend, you either can parent your kids or you can pay. Like, there's no like weird third option where you don't do either of those things. Well, there is. It's called being a deadbeat. So, sort of there's that, or, and maybe with normal people, maybe not in this situation, but with normal people, you might have 50-50, but like one person, there's like a big disparity between the parents in terms of their income, their wealth, whatever. Well, your kids are the ones who are going to suffer for that disparity. So, anyway, that was my sort of child support related rant. But my question to you is, I know that there's like calculators that calculate, but how does like your wealth, like you have a bunch of like sort of wealth out there versus like your income, like how does that factor into the calculation of child support?
That's a great question. And actually, everything you said, I could probably parse out like 5 or 6 of those points that you made right there.
Sorry, I went off a little bit.
So on that particular question, in Maryland, there is a threshold for when the child support guidelines apply, is a compulsory appliance. So there is a combined income threshold of, I believe now, after amendment to the family law statute last summer that went into effect, I think it's the combined income of the parents is over $360,000 a year, which is $30,000 a month in gross income before taxes. The child support guidelines compulsorily apply, meaning you plug in one parent's income, the other parent's income, the overnights, and the child support calculator, which is kind of a glorified Excel spreadsheet, spits out a number, and that number is to be applied for the support of the children, absent a very, 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 very good reason. You can get what's called a downward deviation, but it can be hard to do, and especially at that income level. Now, you can always pay more than like the child support guidelines indicate, and I've certainly had cases where that turned out to be part of the resolution, and I kind of have a hunch that that's kind of what's going on with Kim and Kanye, is kind of a official gesture of either goodwill on Kanye's part or some sort of ego-related machination on his part to say that he, there's no way anyone can say he's not taking care of his kids when he's paying $200,000 a month of child support. But coming back to Maryland, when you're a super high income family, the guidelines don't apply. The problem is the number just kind of like keeps skewing up into the stratosphere, and the legislature, with good reason, says, but at that point, do the children need that level of support? As you know, it's hard to justify a need of, $10,000 a month in child support alone, because the children's room and board, their food, most of the time their cancer activities, I mean, that can be met at a much lower threshold. Now, in these, particularly if it's a disparate situation, meaning one party has all the income or significantly more of the income versus the other, you have a situation where it's about the child, right? So you have a situation where the lifestyle of the child or children might be this luxurious lifestyle of the rich and famous with one parent, and then the other parent might be kind of like in a more normal stratosphere or whatever. And that is inequitable and can have, can ripple into custody, maybe cause some kind of psychological questions for the children. So the idea is that the children's standard of living kind of stays the same with both parents. And that's impossible to get exactly, but the principle is generally that one parent shouldn't be able to provide a certain lifestyle for the children that the other parent simply can't. And it's not necessarily to like make the other parent wealthy. The logic is grounded in the impact on the children and them going from kind of one level of household to the other. And then to circle back on like having wealth versus income, it could be a situation where it might be more fun to talk about like lottery winner or something like that. But more commonly, there's like a trust situation where one parent has maybe family resources, but doesn't work, but can pull from the trust. Those trust disbursements are income, but that's also something you can voluntarily do, right? So it gets to be this question of how often are they pulling from the trust, et cetera. But one way to look at it is, large sums of money can generate interest. And that interest can also be considered income. So if you had, there was a case I had a couple of years ago where there was an argument that, if you put $1 million into into state bonds and it earned 4% tax-free every year, then 4% of $1 million could be considered income, and that would offset yada, yada, yada. So there's just because you have money kind of set aside doesn't mean it can't also generate income or be projected to generate income for the party that has it. But those cases, while they're not uncommon, they're certainly not the typical case that comes along or the typical kind of conundrum that people in family law cases face.
That makes sense. Actually, I did have a question, a sort of follow-up question that is from a fan of the show.
I love fans of the show.
Fan of the podcast. Dave McDonald had a question, a call-in question. Dave McDonald's call-in question is, why is my light so weird? Oh, that wasn't the question, but I'm sorry, the sun is like shifting here. Dave McDonald's follow-on question was, given that Kanye has gone full Nazi, that is potentially or hopefully likely, you would hope that people aren't going to tolerate that, going to affect his future income, his earnings. He's Adidas has ditched him, other, people are going to sort of, Anna Wintour has apparently declared him a persona non grata, Vogue, whatever. So what happens in a circumstance where your income or your financial situation changes a lot, in terms of child support? How do you deal with that, okay, to fix with the child support payments? That was Dave's question.
Great question. So there's kind of two ways you lose income, right? In a child support or alimony context. There's a voluntary loss of income, meaning the payor does something or takes some action so that they lose income, and then they're like, oh, I lost my income. I can't afford to pay child support or alimony anymore, which you get more than you'd like to, and the court is very set up to prevent that because there is a mechanism to basically say, to impute income to the individuals that lose their employment. The other side of that coin is an involuntary loss of employment. Let's see, an easy example of that is if I were to have a child support obligation or an alimony obligation, and I walk out to get my morning paper and I get hit by a school bus and I can't work anymore. Okay, no question about that. Catastrophic loss of ability to earn an income. My support obligations, as long as they're allowed to be modified, alimony sometimes is not modifiable, would certainly be a scenario in which my income, my ability to earn an income would have to be reevaluated, and any award of child support and alimony would also have to be reevaluated. But if I were to quit my job and go be a bartender at a college bar, if I've ever done that before.
Not that you've ever fantasized about doing that.
No, never. But that I wouldn't have, the court's not going to look at that and go, oh yeah, Mr. Whitney, great decision. You can, lose your stable job and go.
You went to work at RJ Bentley's again. Like, that's cool.
Go pump 250 rum and cokes to undergrads. So what would happen is the court basically takes the position of, you can go do that, sir, but you're going to continue to pay your support obligations as if you can earn the number that we found prior. And but then there's lots of gray areas in between that, and lots of times people, say, oh, sometimes people aren't too upset to like lose their job in the middle of like a child support or alimony situation, and then say, I need my obligation reduced. But there's a mechanism for it. And so Kanye, but Kanye's in such like a different stratosphere, it would be hard to quantify what that looks like. I mean, I saw reports that his net worth plummeted by like $300-400 million. But if his net worth,
that's still not that much for someone who's a billionaire. Like, you
right.
still have a lot of money.
But like net worth is also not an indication of actual income, right? So, if Kanye's career plummets all the way down the drain, as like, sometimes entertainers' careers tend to do, like we've all seen those Hollywood true stories of the lifestyles of movie stars or rock stars or sports entertainers, whatever the situation may be. That when they were on top of the world, they were on top of the world. And Mike Tyson's a great example. Mike Tyson had all those stories of like mansions and owning tigers and things of that nature. And then at one point in his career, before his recent resurgence, he was essentially dead broke. And so the lifestyle, the child support payments the individuals in that situation could pay are completely different than when the spotlight of fame is off them and the faucet of money turns off.
Yeah, and Mike Tyson, there's a good example of someone who was able to come back from some pretty, people are pretty willing to forgive, because he had done there were some pretty terrible things that, can you come, but, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree. He's kind of cleaned up his image in a way that no one seems to talk about, kind of early 2000s Mike Tyson, or whatever the era of his like late 90s, 2000s, whatever his late 90s Mike Tyson behavior. No one really talks about it anymore. But I think he's owned a lot of that in a way that maybe
I think that makes a big difference, like really sort of taking ownership over that and trying to make amends. But well, and I think there's an interesting argument to be made with Kanye to a hypothetical argument, like, is what he's doing voluntary or involuntary? Like, I don't know.
That's a fascinating.
That's a great question.
Right.
It's hard to say. Yes, he's mentally ill and it seems like he's in some sort of a mental health crisis, but also like lots of people who have bipolar disorder don't go full Nazi. Like most of them don't,
Well, I don't know. I instantly think of the comment he made on one of those podcasts where he said like, he's in the throes of making some Nazi Hitler comment. And he says, like, it basically says Adidas can't fire me because of their history, to their historical ties to, Germany and Nazi and all that. And then Adidas dropped him like 3 days later or something like that. So. And
on one hand, he's not wrong about that. But on the other hand, like.
Well, he was wrong that they wouldn't drop him.
He's wrong they wouldn't drop him. He's not wrong that,
Mm-hmm. No. So, if I was on the other side of the voluntariness of it all, I would say, he put his hand in the crocodile's mouth right there.
I guess that definitely is a sort of fun argument. I would certainly litigate that if that were my area.
I don't think there's any hesitancy of attorneys willing to litigate the Kanye and Kim dispute. I think Kanye is like on attorney number 6 at this point. And I hate to tell anyone that like watches these videos, if you're on attorney number 6 and you come into my office, I would be highly skeptical that I'm going to be attorney number 7. I mean, it's just a giant red flag. But I don't think there's going to be any stoppage of attorneys for Kanye, and they'll all probably be high quality just because of the spotlight of the case.
Right, and the money, because the money's there.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you got to get paid, right? Cat's got to eat.
Well, at that level, I think you might make an exception and say, I'm willing to eat off these Kanye bucks.
Yeah, but I think with the 6 attorneys thing, it's like I was trying to explain this concept to Rory the other day when he was my son, when he was complaining about like, you know, everyone is terrible. I'm so mad at everybody. And I'm like, well, so sometimes, you know, if you meet one person and they're a jerk, you know, yeah, you've met someone who's a jerk. But if everybody's a jerk, you know, maybe you got to take a look at who's really the problem in this situation.
Maybe.
So yeah, if you have a problem with 6 attorneys, if either you're firing them or they're firing you, yeah,
could be. And that's in my line. Like I didn't say I won't represent somebody like that, but I'm going to look for the same reason you're talking about. I'm going to look at them pretty skeptically and wonder what's going on with why can't you make one of these relationships work?
I'll give you 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because there's always going to be sort of personality. Sometimes personalities are better suited.
Yeah, and sometimes the lawyers, just for whatever reason, either they don't fit or like you get burned out on certain cases, like certain high conflict cases. You just kind of sometimes there comes a point where like maybe it's time for fresh eyes.
Mm-hmm. And certainly there's some that it's just a bad fit. Like one client that I had comes to mind that I handed off to your dad, and they had a wonderful relationship. Yeah. So sometimes it's just can't make this work, and you know, so a better lawyer can.
And interesting dynamics there. But let's leave it at that. Everybody, thank you for checking out this video. We're going to do more. If you liked it, hit the like button, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video. Melissa and I can answer questions we get in the comments. That would be great. And we will thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.